right, appreciate you guys being here. Maybe your flights got canceled or something, I don't know. But it's good for us to get our first win with this group, and we'll have some really good film to show of some things that we didn't do well, some things that we did do well. They have a good team, South Carolina State. They're aggressive. They drive the ball hard. They're really tenacious on the offensive glass. They play hard, really hard, and they're not afraid to be physical. That's for sure. So, which if that's what the DNA of their coach is, and so it doesn't surprise me that they play that way. But anyway, I thought we did a good job in the first half. I was happy with where we at. We didn't finish around the basket great necessarily as a group, but I thought we did some good things and were able to. I think we gave them 25 points in the first half, and that counted. We threw a pick six away that they came down and got a layup on. And a couple other things, offensive rebounds. We could have held them pretty low defensively, which was a huge part of what the DNA of our team needs to be in order to get where we want to go.
Questions? Trey?
Obviously, game one didn't go the way you wanted it to, but kind of overall, you kind of touched on it, but overall, what kind of response did you see from the guys in game two?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good response. This is going to sound like as much coach speak as you've ever heard probably, but in a cliche, but I honestly do not believe that if we had somehow won that game, that the messages that we were trying to send as a staff would have been received the same way as they were having lost that game. Not that I'm happy that we lost. I just wish we would have played better. But we are we are where we are right now. And so I think we needed to hear some of the things that we said as a staff. I think we took those things to heart. I think we prepared individually probably better. And, so when I think about response, that's what I think about. And obviously, Colin Murray-Boyles played significantly better in terms of finishing around the basket than he did in the first game. But even with that, we had a chance that we could have lost that first game because of all these other things that we didn't do, that tonight we did a much better job at those. So I thought it was a really good response by the entire group.
You touched on that earlier, but you said you wanted your guys to kind of finish better under the basket. How do you want them to kind of improve that in the future?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. One, I think you have to practice. I think people take it for granted that you're close to the rim, that you've been doing this your whole life. You should just be able to make those things go in. Like, you got to practice those, and you got to practice those shots, not only to develop the soft touch that it takes to do it, but you have to practice them under the circumstances that if you can simulate what you're going to find in the games. Bodies flying around, maybe off balance, going from off balance to being on balance. I told Colin that after the game. I think every shot he took around the basket, he had gathered himself, he had gotten back on balance, and he finished in a strong way, versus that was not the case in the first game. So I think some of it's practice, but also some of it is using some stuff that'll help you do those things, like a pump fake that'll help you get, or a power dribble. A couple of things that can help you get on balance. And if you're on balance and you're making a strong move, your chances go through the roof in terms of your percentages on those kinds of shots. And so I think those are ways that we would stress that our guys can improve their percentages.
Obviously, a starting lineup change. Kind of, when did you make that decision? How did that conversation go? And what did you see from the lineup that you started the game with?
Yeah, I watched the game again, and we've got a lot of guys. That are close to one another in terms of ability and talent. So really, the change did not have to do with ability necessarily. It was. Some of it had to do with rotations, the following rotations. Some of it had to do with the propensity to do certain things better early on in the game. And Jacoby Wright just in his DNA as a basketball player is the kind of guy who's going to do those things more often. And so we need to get off to a start that's going to, you know, make a little safer decision maybe. You know, there's a variety of things that go into it, but it wasn't about, well, this guy's better than that guy, and that's why we start this guy. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I think he did help us. This lineup got off to a pretty good start, especially defensively, and I thought, you know, when you take one guy and put him in the lineup, you take one guy out. I thought Zach did a great job. You know, honestly, if you look at it, Zach played more minutes than Jacoby. All right, so I can see why for young people maybe it matters if you're starting or not, if you start a game or you don't start a game. But at the end of the day, where are you when the game's on the line? What does it look like in terms of, do you have opportunity or do you not have opportunity? Because those are the guys to me that have some sort of grievance potentially, as guys that, you know, didn't earn as much opportunity.
We talked about Jacoby Wright and his scoring performance. I'm just kind of curious on how have you seen him develop as a shot creator, like creating shots off of the dribble specifically?
Yeah, he's done some good things. He's developing into a well-rounded guy. Today he made threes. I thought he did a good job of finding some good looks. He was aggressive on a couple of them also, which I like to be aggressive as shooters. He was aggressive on a couple of them. Even one of them that he missed was pretty aggressive. But he found his way into some of those. He had a nice pull-up jumper that he created good space to get a pull-up jumper. His game it's developed from the time that I first saw him when I got here until right now. It's been a lot of development for him as a player. As a defender, I mean, I think that's probably the area that he has developed the most. He makes more physical plays than what he had done when we first got here. He's a good communicator. I just think he's developed holistically, but I think that, and we had a conversation before the beginning of the year. I think one of the biggest things for him is just to be able to, you know, when you get open shots, be able to knock those things down, jump up with confidence and knock those things down. So he did that tonight, and so, you know, hopefully he does the same thing every game.
I asked the players about this too, but SC State shot 36% from the field and under 20% from behind the arc. How impressed were you with how your defense played today?
Yeah, I thought we did a really good job defensively. There was one stretch, especially in the first half, that I thought it was, and they made a couple of tough shots too. You know, their inside guy made a really good move, dribble drop to the baseline, but it was still a high bank on a post move. Guys don't normally use the glass on post moves like from that far away. So it was a great finish by him. Thought that was one. They made I just think of a handful of tough shots that they made, but there was one stretch in the first half really where we were cooking as a defensive unit. And then we followed those up with good rebounding also. I think they still had 7 offensive rebounds in the first half. It's just kind of who they are. I mean, you got your hands full trying to keep them off the glass. But I was really impressed with overall our defensive effort. But that one window in that first half, I thought we were exceptional on the defensive side.
What was the window?
I don't know what the frame of time was, but I remember because we weren't playing great offensively, and we were still able to build our lead up a little bit, even though we weren't that efficient on the offensive end. But we had a bunch of stops. I don't know when that was specifically, but I just.
The last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of when the game got.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember. I remember it's like, you know, if you're playing a football game, in basketball you're on both sides of it, but if you're playing a football game and you're the defensive, coordinator, I guess, and like you're getting all these stops, and then you're like, if the offense could only get it a little bit going. And in some games, it's probably vice versa a little bit. And so I felt like we were in that moment, like if the offense could get going a little bit, we could be in a really good spot. But thank goodness the defense is doing what it's doing. I mean, that's how I felt during the game. I don't know if the stats specifically back that up, but that's how I felt.
Anything else for Coach Trey?
A couple more. We talked about you want the guys to feel comfortable being aggressive shooting the three. Outside of Jacoby Wright and Morris, it felt like everybody else was struggling. I think it was like about 2 for 17, 2 for 18, something like that. Kind of, what's your message to the team in those moments, and especially to Cam Scott, a young freshman who at one point appeared to be a bit frustrated with not letting his shots fall?
Well, that's your evaluation. I didn't see that necessarily, but I mean, in terms of Cam specifically. But yeah, the numbers don't lie. We had some guys that didn't shoot. That's why you have a team. I mean, ultimately, I think we netted. Did we net? Were we 8 for 24?
8 for 27.
8 for 27. So you're just under 1 point per possession, which you always have to at least say if you're at 1 point per possession, it's certainly an acceptable performance. Probably from 2 or 3, but definitely from 3. But my message to guys is I can't make them make it. All I can do is provide the environment that they feel comfortable taking those shots. And that's up to you. You got to, I always say you got to get with your own individual basketball gods and figure that out with them. But you got to spend time in the gym. You got to recreate scenarios. You have to rep it out. You got to fine tune it. And then if it's not you ultimately, then you got to pump the brakes on your attempts probably a little bit till you get the thing figured out and find another way to be effective. I just heard them talk about a player earlier in the week. Somebody said that was the ultimate compliment that you could give someone, is that when they don't score, they impact the game so many other ways, make guys better, just the stats get stuffed in other ways. And so, when it's not your day, you gotta find other ways to do it. Miles, I think, had 7 rebounds today, so that was helpful to us. But again, what's that?
3 blocks, too.
3 blocks. Okay. See. But anyway, I think the basic concept is, if you look last year, we had that sometimes. Between sometimes it would be Michi, other times it would be BJ. Talon was pretty consistent at 45-6%, whatever he was from 3. There would be a variety of guys that would make enough shots on any particular day that when you look down, you got an acceptable number of makes. And so I think ultimately that's your goal.
Lastly, if in the first half, especially the first 10, maybe 15 minutes of it, it felt like you were very quick to make lineup changes when something went wrong. I remember at one point it was after the timeout, it was 3 turnovers in a 2-minute span, and it was a wholesale change. 4 of the guys came in. Was that on purpose, or was that just kind of flow of the game? This is kind of how, what went into that?
I just was making substitutions as I saw fit. I think I just, maybe. I mean, I don't know who was going in at what specific time. I don't predetermine at this point, this is a good time for this guy. I mean, you kind of get a feel for who can run, who's starting to run hot after a certain amount of time, but it was nothing punitive, that's for sure. I really don't necessarily believe in, take the necessarily out of it. I don't believe in substitutions that are of a punitive nature. I don't think guys grow that way. I don't think they respond that way, unless a guy really does something that it needs to go that way. That's rarely do I substitute in that fashion, but sometimes I'm going to sub because you have to play better. That's part of my job. There's not a lot of things on game day that I do compared to the players. One of them is that. is manage who seems like they're playing better with whom, and who's not helping, and then kind of push a button as to who goes in when. But yeah, so they're not punitive in nature. These substitutions, really, it just boils down to, sometimes it's a combination of who else is in there too. I sub one guy out. He's not a great defender. He needs to be in there with two other strong defenders. So I got to bring another guy in so that he can go out there and play and function in a way that the team still can move the way that it needs to.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.